Hey everyone, we're here with DJ Deon Jamy, our MBA graduate who took our business, our closer control, to a high six-figure company. Say hi to everybody.
Hey guys, it's nice to be over here. So my friend, my brother Grant. So obviously the way we started was we actually met in MBA school in our first, I think the first semester, or you can say the first quarter, right? Yeah, we had a quarter system. So yeah, in the first quarter, we had sort of like the similar classes. And that's where we started friendship. And then 2 years, 3 years later, here we are running a company together, making sure that the business climbs to greater heights. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm just thrilled to be here. So, Grant, I would like you to just lead us to how you want the show going.
Yeah, so that leads into my first question for you, Dion. When we were in an MBA program, 100%, 99 to 100% of the people were thinking of the traditional way of making money, which is you graduate, you apply to jobs, you get a job, and you stay in the job for who knows how many years until you find a promotion or a better job, correct?
Yep, that's totally.
So, with that being said, you took a different route. You went the entrepreneurial route, and you've done this previously before you went to MBA school. Talk to me about the mindset of finding opportunities beyond the traditional way of doing things, which is applying to jobs, getting in the job, staying there for X amount of years, getting the 9 to 5 salary. Talk to me about the creativity or the mindset in terms of finding those opportunities beyond that, which is starting your own job or finding partners to start a job, or even, you know, not taking the 9 to 5 route.
Well, to be honest, Grant, I would not say that I did not try the 95 route. I did. So, obviously, after my MBA, let's take a little bit of step back. So, after my first year of bachelor's, like I worked a corporate job. I worked in Texas Instruments for 1 year, sort of like just to get to understand a little bit more about the actual work culture, the company, how exactly goes in and hierarchy. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I kind of enjoyed it. But then again, I wanted to have something where I could have a little bit more control and ownership of what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I decided to start an edtech startup with two of my other co-founders back in India. It kind of worked for 2 years, but then later on, obviously, due to COVID, we had to like sort of like shut it down. And then I used the lessons which I gained over there, and I decided to go for my MBA, mainly because I wanted to upskill a certain level of my knowledge when it comes to the management side and also into the business terms. So after my MBA, I decided to give sort of like the entrepreneur journey another try. Ended up co-founding a social networking app called Around Me. So it had like pretty good traction, but then again, even we were not able to scale to the level we wanted to scale. So had to like shut that down again. And obviously, after that, I thought, you know what, let me give the 9 to 5 a little bit of a try. And yeah, like I interviewed for a bunch of jobs, did a couple of like contract works, kind of like okay, but then again, I was still wasn't feeling satisfied. Then during those time, I met Grant. I found out that his brother Connor, he was working on a company called Closer Control, basically a real estate CRM built on top of Go High Level. And yeah, and then I just joined the journey, and here we are, 7, 8 months later.
You said one word that really stood out to me: control. I'm curious, like many people, why do you enjoy the control, or why did you want the control?
So just to be clear, I don't want people to misunderstand or like misinterpret what I meant by control. In short, what I meant is I want the freedom to use my creativity in expanding the marketing as well as operation side. I have, since I have built companies before, I have run startups before. I know there are certain strategies which does work really well, especially in another business. But then again, if you're working under, let's say, a couple of like senior managers, if you're working maybe 2 3 levels below senior manager, you will not get the opportunity to use that creativity to apply that particular business method, especially in closer control. I know one of the easiest way we can get views, or let's say garner control, is through memes. And that is something which a lot of companies take a step back. They feel like, you know what, memes are, they might feel a little bit childish. They don't feel it's that socially acceptable. But obviously, we have to keep in mind we live in a social media era. If you want to get views, if you want to get attention, you got to do something which stands out. And taking action, or let's say taking control of the latest trends which is happening in today's market, is one of the best ways you can stay ahead. And that's what I actually meant by control. You know what? There are certain creativity, certain business tactics which I know it works, but it might not be easily acceptable by the seniors who work in the company for. So for me, that's what I meant. Like having the freedom to actually go ahead and explore certain methods and certain choices which you know for a fact it may or may not work. So I think basically what I want is the freedom to choose as well as test different theories and different methods to see what actually works in the market and what actually does not work in the market. Because when you're at a leadership level, you get to see in real life whether some of the things which you had in mind is actually
Not too sure what you were getting at.
okay. So in short, basically, I wanted the freedom to test out my strategies and theories, and then at the end of the day, I can confidently say, you know what, some strategies work, some strategies do not work. So that's pretty much what I meant by control. No, don't take it in the wrong way.
Okay, that's an incredible answer. What he meant by control is to have the freedom to control what is being done within his role. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So when you have that responsibility to have the freedom to do what you think is best for the company, that comes with a ton of responsibility and even pressure, a ton of pressure for you to execute and to succeed and make the business succeed. How do you handle that pressure and how do you guide it in the right direction so then there's more productivity in what you do?
I think at the end of the day, you got whenever you decide to take any risk, you have to weigh the risk as well as the effects. So obviously, if you're pouring maybe 100% of your time and resource into one campaign, which you feel for a fact that it's going to work, it might not be a smart idea. Like obviously allocate some time and resources for projects or let's say works which you know is gonna get some motion going. At the same time, invest part of your time into something which you feel can blow up, or at the same time may not blow up. But then again, if you're not testing out different strategies, you will not know what exactly is gonna stick. You might come up with something which is brand new, which somebody has not come out yet. So is that what he meant?
So, with a lot of responsibility and the control of what you can or control on where the business is going, that comes with a lot of tasks and a lot of things that you need to do in order to execute. How do you prioritize those tasks from most important to least important?
When it comes to prioritizing tasks and responsibilities, I tend to use the Eisenhower Matrix where I divide the tasks based on most urgent, most important, not urgent, most important, and not urgent, not important. So let's say when it comes to the most important as well as most urgent task, we tend to focus more of our time on those money making activities and making sure that things are floating right. So for me, the first and the foremost thing is making sure that our client tickets are being handled. So we have support members who are handling client tickets on day-to-day basis. But then again, we get a huge volume of tickets happening every single time. And some of the times certain tickets do get lost if they don't have the right SOPs, the support team doesn't have the right SOPs at the right time, some things get more time in getting solved. Second, what you need to do is you also need to start delegating certain tasks as well as responsibilities. So let's say when it comes to creating content, right? You can have the main idea, but obviously making that content come to life, that takes a lot of time. So what you can do is you can instead handle that task to somebody who also knows a little bit on the marketing side, so they can bring your idea to fruition. So third, the things which you need to keep in mind is in order, especially at a startup, you need to make sure that you have a good relationship with your team and the other members, because obviously all of you guys work in close knit circles, and if one of you guys have like sort of like a bad friction, it is going to affect a lot of the projects. At the same time, there's going to be a lot of delays which is going to be happening, which would in turn affect the company's motion as well as and it would I would say it will impact the company negatively.
You bring in incredible ideas to the table. You have this big vision. You know what you're saying. What it ultimately comes down to is communicating with your team and communicating those most important to least important, urgent, the most urgent and the most important, all the way to the least urgent and least important. And it takes a lot of communication with your team to get there. And in addition, leadership. Talk to me about the leadership side and how your leadership, or talk to me about the leadership side and how that affects how you communicate.
So for me, I think a couple of the qualities which actually makes someone a great leader is being patient. You have to be really patient, especially when you are teaching somebody the ropes on how exactly if you want to do a particular task of business.
So let's lead in. So let's talk about leadership within the company. I'll talk about mine, and Deon will talk about his. Let's first start off with Deon. What is your leadership style, and what defines you as a leader?
I think to be a leader, you got to lead by example. So obviously, for me, I have a ton of experience, especially when it comes to the marketing and operations side. And I try to instill that knowledge amongst the rest of my team members who are also in the same division. So let's say when it comes to marketing, especially when it comes to how exactly you want certain copyrights to be done and how neat as well as clear the messaging should be. So these are certain expectations which I set from the very beginning of the goal itself. Let's say if you're creating any certain stuff, you know what, this is a quality I want it to be done. If not, obviously it's not going to get pushed out. But I don't just set those expectations like that. I would also try to teach them on how exactly we can reach to that certain level of quality. So obviously, I feel like, you know what, not to be a leader, you need to be experienced, you need to be patient, you need to have the willingness to teach your peers on how to do that one particular task. And at the end of the day, be good. Be good to all of your team members because not everybody is going to have the same skill set when it comes to that one particular role, right? Some of the guys, they might be really good in design. Some of them, they might be really good in the product side. Some might be really good in marketing. Some might be really good in sales. So you cannot always, you know what, push somebody down or like maybe even embarrass somebody in the front of everybody, especially when it comes to calling certain things out. So, you know what, be good, be kind, have the willingness to teach, and at the end of the day, be transparent. And to top it all of this combined by together, lead by example. And I think that's how you can be a good leader.
So one thing I took away from you, Deon, from your answer is to be genuine, to be transparent, and to be true to yourself and true to the rest of your team. Can you expand a little bit more about that?
So being genuine meaning setting clear expectations on what exactly you want at the same time, how exactly you want certain things to be. So let's say, okay, when even when you're working for a certain company, you would have certain expectations of what you want from your leaders, right? Maybe it's recognition, maybe it's maybe it's more pay, maybe it might be more ownership regarding certain tasks. So it's always good to be very clear upfront rather than, I did all of this thing, this is what this is what I expect, this is what I expected. But in the lot of cases, when you don't speak up from the very beginning of what you want, it always ends up going wrong. So what I meant is at the end of the day, it can. So what I meant is the same thing. You can always apply to how exactly guide a certain person too. You know what? I want a certain product being pushed out right now. Let's say when it comes to creating a certain integration between Avoma and GHL. So basically what I wanted was I want all the note-take inscriptions to be populated in GHL and I want it in a certain format and I also want it in a certain format. But if you're not setting certain clear expectations of how you want it and how you wanted it, so if you're not setting clear expectations on how you want certain things, the team or let's say someone who's doing that task, they might take it in the wrong way, and you might not be happy with what you want. At the end of the day, you this ends up causing friction. So if you want certain things to be done, be genuine and be transparent on how you want it, or let's say, or what you want. And I think that goes a long way every single time.
I'm going to flip the script. Let's say you're not the manager, you're not the head of the company. You're, you know, you're the one doing the day-to-day activities. How well, here, let me say this. You're the one doing the day-to-day activities. What what advice would you give that person to manage up to, the leader, the manager, the CEO? Like, how do you, because you talk about all about managing down, you're the top and you're talking to your people. Let's flip the script. Let's say you're on the bottom talking up. How would you approach that so then they're happy and that you are getting the things that you need to get done?
So obviously, when you're first starting out in your career, be the best version of a student. Try to be a sponge during that time. Absorb as much as possible from your peers, from your leaders, because they have more experience in the field because they have more experience in the field, right? So during that time, try to focus on finishing the task. At the same time, make sure that you're doing those tasks correctly, the way it's supposed to be done. After a while, you get the hang of it. You get the sort of style and you get the sort of way on how your managers want things to be done. Eventually, you try stepping up your game. You try going a little bit further, more than what they requested. And this would make sure that, they would feel, you are able to stand out on your own. You're able to manage your own division, and that would equate a promotion. So I think at the end of the day, if you want to go up or if you want to grow to the next level, you always have to be a student. So even the managers too, they still have to be a student, because even the CEOs, obviously, if they want to take the company to the next level, they also have to be a student. So for any person to grow, be a sponge, but a sponge which absorbs information. You can always absorb the bad stuff too along the way, but then you got to make sure you got to know the difference between what to absorb and what not to absorb. So I hope that answers your question, Grant.
Incredible answer, Dion. Can you give me the example of when you joined Closer Control with Connor? Because essentially you weren't immediately an executive. How did you become that sponge within Closer Control?
So obviously, when I first joined Closer Control, like at that time, I was just sort of like looking for something, just to be a part of, because I sort of like didn't like the contract job. So initially, I think when I just started exactly as one of Connor's first marketing hire. Just started like building the entire marketing systems over there, which includes like email campaigns, SMS campaigns, then social media side, setting up the YouTube channel. But once I think when Connor started noticing, I was able to handle the entire marketing division by myself, then he appointed me as one of the executives for the marketing side. So obviously that came to happen because I did work in a lot of other places where I did gain a ton of experience, right? So in order for anybody to level up, you have to be a student first, learn as much as possible, and then prove yourself to the guys you're working for. Once they feel like, you're more of an asset, they will want to keep you no matter what.
So we're going to leave this off with a banger of a question for Dion. We talked about the full circle business, managing down, being the CEO, being the manager, managing your employees, and managing up, which is, you're the employee and you're managing up to the CEO or the manager. Essentially, we just talked about what it means to do business. With that being said, give me one word. In one word, what does it mean to do business? And why?
What does it mean to do business?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's freedom and not bounded by limits.
Explain more.
So the freedom to grow as much as possible. So when you're in a business, obviously you get to see unlimited growth. You have nothing which is stopping you from growing. And second, you're not bounded by certain titles or certain laws. As the company keeps growing, you also get to keep growing. And you get to have more responsibilities and you get to explore more and you get to test your skills more and more as time goes on. So I think for me, I think that's the part which I love about being in business.
Incredible answer. That concludes today's podcast. We appreciate everybody for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Grant. And I hope we keep growing and keep getting to the next level.
Cheers, brother.